remember the morning light used to fall softly through the kitchen window. It used to touch the walls of this house like a blessing. This house where I raised my son with my own hands. Where I cooked meals with love even when there was barely anything in the cupboard. Where I stayed awake on winter nights, sewing clothes by lamplight so Adil could go to school looking decent. My name is Shamim Begum. And this is my story. People say a mother's love knows no limits. I believed that. I still do. But what they don't tell you is that love, when taken for granted, begins to feel like a weight you carry alone in the dark. My husband passed away when Adil was only 12. Heart attack. Sudden. One moment he was there, laughing at the dinner table. The next moment gone. Just like that. Life doesn't ask permission before it shatters you. After that, it was just the two of us. Me and my boy. I worked as a seamstress. My fingers bled sometimes from the needle, but I never complained. I took extra orders, stayed up late, woke up early. I wanted Adil to have what I never had: education, dignity, a future. I wanted him to walk with his head held high. And he did. He grew up to be a kind gentleman. He got a good job. He made me proud. And when he told me he wanted to marry, I felt my heart swell with joy. I thought, finally, our little home will be filled with laughter again. Finally, I'll have a daughter. Her name was Hira. She was beautiful, confident, modern. She smiled at me during the wedding, and I thought I saw warmth in her eyes. I thought I saw a future where we would sit together, cook together, talk like mothers and daughters do. But I was wrong. The first few months were fine. Or maybe I just didn't notice. Maybe I was too happy to see. Hira would smile at me in front of Adil, but the moment he left for work, the smile would disappear. Her tone would change. Her eyes would turn cold. Small things at first. "Amy, why do you still cook in that old style? No one eats like that anymore. Amy, don't wear that dupatta in front of my friends. It looks so outdated. Amy, can you not sit in the living room when guests come? It's better if you rest in your room." I would smile. Nod. Go to my room. I told myself she's young. She's adjusting. Give her time. Give her love. She'll understand. But time didn't change anything. It only made things worse. Hira began to take over the house. She rearranged the furniture. She threw away my old curtains, the ones I had stitched myself. She changed the kitchen, the shelves, even the way we prayed. She made it clear, without ever saying it directly, that this house was no longer mine. It was hers. And Adil, my son, my boy, he said nothing. I would look at him sometimes, searching his face for the child I raised. The one who used to hold my hand and say, "Amy, when I grow up, I'll take care of you forever." But that boy was gone. In his place was a man who looked away when his wife mocked me. A man who stayed silent when I was told to eat alone in the kitchen. A man who chose peace over principle. I started spending more time in my room. I would sit by the window, watching the street below, remembering the days when this house felt like home. I would cry sometimes, quietly, so no one would hear. But I never stopped praying for them. I prayed that Hira's heart would soften. That Adil would find his voice. That love would return to this house. Because that's what mothers do. We forgive before we're even asked. We hope when there's no reason to. We love even when it's not returned. But hope, I learned, can only carry you so far. One evening, I was sitting in the courtyard, peeling vegetables for dinner. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I used to love this time of day. It felt peaceful. Sacred. Hira came out, her phone in her hand, her face tight with irritation. "Amy, why are you sitting here? I told you I'm having friends over tonight." I looked up at her, confused. "I'm just preparing dinner, Beatty. I'll be done soon." "That's not the point." Her voice was sharp. "I don't want you sitting here when they arrive. It looks... I don't know, it just doesn't look good." I felt something crack inside me. Not anger. Not even sadness. Just exhaustion. "Where should I go, Hira?" She sighed as if I was asking something unreasonable. Just stay in your room, please. Is that so hard? I stood up slowly, my knees aching. I gathered the vegetables in my lap and walked inside. I didn't say anything. What was there to say? That night, I heard laughter from the living room. Music. The clinking of glasses. I sat alone in my room, eating plain roti with yogurt, listening to the sounds of a life I was no longer part of. And I realized something. I had become invisible in my own home. Days blurred into each other. I stopped trying to join them for meals. I stopped trying to make conversation. I moved through the house like a ghost, present but unseen. Hira's words became sharper. Amy, why do you shuffle your feet when you walk? It's so annoying. Amy, can you not hum while you pray? It's distracting. Amy, honestly, do you have to be so old-fashioned about everything? I would smile. Apologize. Retreat. But inside, something was breaking. Adil noticed, I think. Sometimes I'd catch him looking at me with guilt in his eyes. But he never said anything. He never stood up for me. He was too afraid of upsetting Hira, too comfortable in his silence. And I was too tired to fight. One afternoon, I was folding clothes in the courtyard when I overheard them talking in the bedroom. The window was open. Their voices carried. She's always around, Adil. Always hovering. I feel suffocated. She's my mother, Hira. Where else would she be? I'm not saying throw her out. I'm just saying, maybe she could stay with your aunt for a while? Or we could find her a small place nearby. There was a pause. A long, terrible pause. Let me think about it, Adil said. Let me think about it. Not, no, she's my mother and this is her home. Not, how can you even suggest that? Just, let me think about it. I stood there, frozen, the clothes slipping from my hands. I felt my chest tighten, my breathing shallow. I thought I might collapse. But I didn't. I walked back inside, slowly, quietly, and sat on my bed. I stared at the wall for a long time, my mind blank, my heart hollow. That night I didn't cry. I was beyond tears. I just sat there in the dark, wondering how I had become a burden to the son I gave everything for. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. I remember because it was the day I used to visit the neighborhood mosque for a weekly gathering. It was the one thing I still looked forward to, sitting with other women, reciting prayers, sharing tea. But that morning, Hira stopped me at the door. Where are you going? To the mosque, Beatty. It's Tuesday. She crossed her arms, her expression cold. I need you to stay home today. I have some guests coming and I need help in the kitchen. But Hira, I go every week. I've already told the others I'll be there. Well, now you're telling them you won't. Her voice was flat, final. Family comes first, Amy. Isn't that what you always say? I felt the words lodge in my throat. I wanted to argue. I wanted to say that I had plans, that I mattered too. But I didn't. I just nodded and took off my dupatta. I spent the afternoon chopping vegetables, washing dishes, serving tea to women who barely looked at me. Hira laughed and chatted with them, playing the perfect hostess, while I worked in silence in the kitchen. When they left, she didn't even thank me. She just told me to clean up and went to her room. I stood there, alone in the kitchen, staring at the dirty dishes, and something inside me finally broke. Not with a scream. Not with tears. With silence. A deep, heavy silence that felt like the end of something. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every word, every look of disdain. I thought about my husband. I thought about the promises we made to each other. I thought about the life I had imagined for myself. And I realized I had lost myself somewhere along the way. I had become so small, so quiet, so apologetic for simply existing. And I couldn't do it anymore. The next morning, I woke up with a strange calm. I went through my usual routine, made tea, said my prayers, sat by the window. But something had shifted. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was awake. And I knew, deep in my bones, that things couldn't continue like this. I didn't know what I was going to do yet. But I knew I couldn't keep living as a shadow in my own home. I deserved more than this. And whether they saw it or not, I was still Shamim Begum. I was still here. Hira's behavior continued to spiral. She no longer bothered to hide her contempt. She spoke to me as if I were a servant. She rolled her eyes when I spoke. She sighed loudly when I entered a room. And Adil, he pretended not to notice. One evening, I asked him if we could talk. Just the two of us. Mother and son. He looked uncomfortable but agreed. We sat in the courtyard, the evening air cool against our skin. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. Adil, I said softly, do you remember when you were little? When your father passed away? He nodded, his eyes downcast. You used to hold my hand every night. You used to say, Amy, don't worry. I'll take care of you. His jaw tightened. Do you still mean that? He didn't answer right away. He looked away, his fingers fidgeting. Of course I do, Amy. Then why does it feel like I'm losing you? His eyes met mine, and for a moment I saw pain there. Real pain. I'm not. I'm trying, Amy. She's adjusting. She needs time. And what about me, Adil? Do I not need anything? He didn't answer. He just stood up, mumbled something about work, and walked away. I sat there alone, the weight of his silence crushing me. The final humiliation came a week later. It was a Friday afternoon. Some neighbors had gathered at our house for tea. Hira was hosting, as usual, playing the gracious daughter-in-law. I stayed in the background, serving tea, refilling plates, smiling politely. But then one of the women, Mrs. Nasim, turned to me and said, Shamim Begum, you've raised such a wonderful son. You must be so proud. I smiled, my heart warming at the acknowledgement. Yes, alhamdulillah. He's a good boy. Before I could say more, Hira cut in, her voice loud and bright. Oh, Amy is very proud. Though honestly, she doesn't really do much these days. She's getting old, you know. Mostly just rests in her room. The room went quiet. I felt my face flush with shame. Mrs. Nasim looked uncomfortable. The other women exchanged glances. Hira laughed, as if she had said something light and funny. I mean, it's natural, right? At a certain age, people slow down. It's good she can rest now. We take care of everything. I stood there, frozen, the teapot trembling in my hands. And then, in a voice so cold it didn't sound like my own, I said, Excuse me. I walked to my room, closed the door, and sat on the edge of my bed. My hands were shaking. My chest was tight. I couldn't breathe properly. And then, finally, the tears came. Not quiet tears. Not dignified tears. Ugly, broken sobs that came from somewhere deep inside me. I cried for the life I had lost. For the son who had forgotten me. For the dignity that had been stripped away piece by piece. And when the tears finally stopped, I felt something new. Not sadness. Clarity. I couldn't stay here anymore. That night, I packed a small bag. Just a few clothes, my prayer beads, a photo of my husband. I didn't leave a note. I didn't make a scene. I just waited until everyone was asleep, and I walked out the door. The night air was cool. The street was empty. I walked slowly, my bag light in my hand, my heart lighter still. I didn't know where I was going. But I knew I couldn't stay. And for the first time in years, I felt something close to freedom. I went to the home of my old friend, Nazreen. We had known each other since we were girls. She opened the door in her nightgown, shocked to see me standing there at such an hour. Shamim? What happened? Are you okay? I smiled, though my eyes were wet. Can I stay here for a few days? She didn't ask questions. She just pulled me inside, made me tea, and held my hand while I cried. The next morning, Adil called. I didn't answer. He called again. And again. Nazreen finally picked up. She's fine, Adil. She just needs some space. Space? From what? What happened? Nazreen looked at me and I shook my head. Just give her time, Nazreen said and hung up. For the first few days, I did nothing. I slept. I prayed. I sat in Nazreen's small garden and watched the birds. I felt empty. But not in a bad way. Like a vessel that had been poured out and was finally resting. Nazreen didn't push me to talk. She just let me be. But one evening over tea, she said, "You know you can't hide forever." "I'm not hiding." "Then what are you doing?" I didn't have an answer. She leaned forward, her eyes kind but firm. "Shamim, you've spent your whole life taking care of others. When are you going to take care of yourself?" I don't even know what that means anymore. It means stop letting people treat you like you don't matter. I looked down at my hands, worn and wrinkled. I don't know how to fight, Nazreen. I'm just tired. Then don't fight. Just stand. Her words stayed with me. A few days later, I received a call from someone unexpected. Mr. Rahim. My late husband's lawyer. I hadn't spoken to him in years. I had almost forgotten he existed. "Begum Sahiba, I heard you're staying with Nazreen. Is everything all right?" I hesitated. "Yes." "Why do you ask?" "I've been trying to reach you. There's some paperwork related to your late husband's estate that we need to discuss. It's been pending for years." "Paperwork?" "Yes. Regarding the house and property. It's important. Can you come to my office?" I felt a strange flutter in my chest. "Yes. I'll come." The next day, I sat across from Mr. Rahim in his small, cluttered office. He was older now, his hair white, his glasses thick. He pulled out a file, dusty and yellowed with age. "Your husband made a will before he passed. Did you know that?" I shook my head. "He was very clear about his wishes. He wanted to make sure you were taken care of." He slid a document across the desk. I stared at it, my heart pounding. "What is this?" "It's the deed to your house. And the small plot of land your husband owned. Everything is in your name, Begum Sahiba. It always has been." The room spun. "In my name?" "Yes. Your husband registered everything under your name shortly before he passed. He wanted to make sure no one could take it from you." I felt tears prick my eyes. My husband. Even in death, he had protected me. Why didn't anyone tell me? You never asked. And frankly, most families don't bother with these things until there's a dispute. I sat there, staring at the paper, my mind racing. The house. The house I had been made to feel like a guest in. The house I had been humiliated in. It was mine. All along it had been mine. I left Mr. Rahim's office in a daze. I walked through the streets, clutching the document to my chest, my heart pounding. I thought about a deal. About Hira. About the way they had treated me. And I felt something stir inside me. Not anger. Not revenge. Just strength. A quiet, steady strength. I went back to Nazreen's house and sat with her in the garden. "What are you going to do?" she asked. I looked at the document in my hands. "I don't know yet. But I'm not going to hide anymore." A few days later, I asked Mr. Rahim to send a message to Adil and Hira. A formal message. Requesting their presence at the house for a legal matter. I didn't tell them what it was about. I just told them to be there. The day came. I stood outside the house, my house, and took a deep breath. I hadn't been back since I left. It looked the same. But it felt different. Or maybe I was different. I walked inside. Adil and Hira were waiting in the living room. They looked confused. Worried. "Ami," Adil stood up, relief flooding his face. "Where have you been? Why didn't you answer my calls?" I didn't answer. I just looked at him. Hira stood too, her arms crossed, her expression guarded. "What's this about? Why did a lawyer contact us?" Mr. Rahim entered behind me, carrying his briefcase. Please sit down, he said calmly. They sat. I remained standing. Mr. Rahim opened his briefcase and pulled out the will. I'm here to clarify a legal matter regarding this property. Hira frowned. What property? This house. And the land registered under the late Mr. Iqbal's name. Adil looked confused. What about it? Mr. Rahim looked at me and I nodded. He continued. Your father left a will, Adil. In it, he clearly stated that all property, including this house, is to remain in your mother's name. She is the sole legal owner. Silence. Hira's face went pale. Adil stared at the lawyer, then at me. What do you mean? I mean, Mr. Rahim said calmly, that this house belongs to your mother. Not to you. Not to your wife. To her. The air in the room changed. Hira's mouth opened, but no words came out. Adil looked like he had been struck. I stood there, my hands folded, my heart steady, and for the first time in years I felt like myself again. Hira was the first to speak. Her voice was shrill, panicked. That's not possible. This house is Adil's. His father left it to him. No, Mr. Rahim said firmly. His father left it to his wife. There's no ambiguity in the will. Hira turned to me, her eyes wide. Amy, this is a misunderstanding, right? You're not going to? I looked at her. Really looked at her. I'm not going to what, Hira? Throw you out? Humiliate you? Make you feel like you don't belong? She flinched. I'm not you. Tears welled up in her eyes. But I didn't feel satisfaction. I just felt tired. Adil finally found his voice. Amy, I don't understand. Why didn't you tell us? Because I didn't know, Adil. I found out only days ago. But this is your home. You would never. Never what? I interrupted, my voice steady. Never ask for respect? Never expect to be treated with dignity? Never expect my own son to stand up for me? He looked down, shame written all over his face. I took a breath. I didn't come here to punish you. I came here to remind you of something you've forgotten. What? His voice was barely a whisper. That I'm still your mother. And this is still my home. The silence that followed was heavy. Hira sat down, her face in her hands, sobbing quietly. Adil stood frozen, unable to look at me. Mr. Rahim cleared his throat. I'll leave the documents here. You can review them at your leisure. Begum Sahiba, if you need anything, you know how to reach me. He left quietly. I stood there, looking at the two people I had loved and served and sacrificed for. And I felt nothing. No anger. No bitterness. Just a deep, aching sadness. Amy, please. Hira's voice was broken. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean. I didn't realize. You didn't realize what, Hira? That I'm a human being? That I have feelings? She sobbed harder. I turned to Adil. And you? You watched. You said nothing. You let her treat me like I was nothing. His eyes were wet. I'm sorry, Amy. I'm so sorry. I was weak. I should have. Yes. You should have. I walked to the window, looking out at the street, the same view I had stared at so many times, feeling invisible. I spent my whole life making sure you had everything. I gave up my dreams, my comfort, my own happiness. And I never asked for anything in return. I just wanted love. I just wanted to be seen. You are, Amy. I see you. No, Adil. You don't. You see your guilt. You see your fear. But you don't see me. He broke down then, fully, his shoulders shaking. And I felt a crack in the wall I had built around my heart. I stayed for a while longer. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed them to understand. I told them about the nights I cried alone, The meals I ate in silence. The dreams I buried so they could live theirs. I told them how it felt to be invisible. To be a burden. To be unwanted in the home I built with my own hands. Hira cried. Adil cried. But I didn't cry. I had no tears left. When I was done, I picked up my bag. Where are you going? Adil asked, panic in his voice. I don't know yet. But I'm not staying here. Ami, please. This is your house. Stay. We'll leave. We'll. I don't want you to leave, Adil. I just don't want to be here right now. Then when will you come back? I looked at him, and for the first time I didn't have an answer. I don't know. I returned to Nazreen's house that night. She made me tea and we sat in silence. How do you feel? She asked. I don't know. Empty, maybe. But not in a bad way. She nodded. You did the right thing. Did I? You told the truth. That's always the right thing. I looked down at my cup, watching the steam rise. I don't want revenge, Nazreen. I just want peace. Then find it. And don't let anyone take it from you again. Over the next few weeks, Adil came to see me. Many times. He brought flowers. He brought apologies. He brought tears. Hira came too. She wrote me letters. Long, tearful letters asking for forgiveness. I read them. But I didn't respond. Not because I didn't forgive them, but because I needed to forgive myself first. For staying too long. For accepting too little. For believing that love meant suffering in silence. One day, I went back to see Mr. Rahim. I want to make some changes, I said. What kind of changes? I want to divide the property. Half for Adil. Half for me. He raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? Yes. And the house? I thought about it for a long time. The house stays mine. He nodded. Very well. I called Adil and told him about the decision. He was silent for a long time. Ami, you don't have to do that. I know. But I want to. Why? Because you're still my son. And I still love you. His voice broke. I don't deserve it. No. You don't. But I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for me. So I can move forward without bitterness. I found a small house on the other side of town. It was quiet. Simple. Just enough for me. I moved in with Nazreen's help. We painted the walls. Hung curtains. Planted flowers in the garden. It felt like starting over. And it felt good. Adil and Hira visit me now. Not every day. But often enough. They're different. Gentler. More aware. Hira helps me with groceries. She asks before she speaks. She listens. Adil sits with me in the garden. We talk. Not about the past. But about the future. It's not perfect. But it's honest. And that's enough. Some mornings I sit by my window with a cup of tea, watching the sun rise. I think about my husband. About the love he showed me even after death. I think about my son. About the lessons he's finally learning. And I think about myself. About the woman I was and the woman I've become. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not broken. I'm just free. Free to live on my own terms. Free to set boundaries. Free to love without losing myself. And that, I've learned, is the greatest gift I could ever give myself. People ask me sometimes if I regret leaving. I tell them no. Because leaving wasn't giving up. It was waking up. Waking up to my own worth. My own voice. My own power. And once you wake up, you can never go back to sleep. I still pray for my son. For his wife. For their happiness. But I also pray for myself now. For my peace. My strength. My joy. Because I've learned that you can't pour from an empty cup. And I've learned that being a mother doesn't mean disappearing. It means standing tall, even when it's hard, even when you're alone. It means knowing that love should never cost you your dignity. And it means teaching your children, not through words but through action, what respect really looks like. My name is Shamim Begum. And this is my story. A story of silence, of pain, of awakening. A story that didn't end with bitterness, but with grace. Because in the end, the greatest strength isn't in holding on. It's in knowing when to let go. And in letting go, I found myself again. The evening light was golden that day, streaming through my kitchen window like a blessing. I stood at the counter, my hands dusted with flour, rolling out dough the way my mother had taught me 50 years ago. The kadai simmered on the stove, his favorite curry, the one with extra ginger and just a hint of jaggery for sweetness. I had been cooking since afternoon. My back ached a little. My fingers moved slower than they used to. But my heart was light. Because tonight, I thought, tonight we would be together again. It had been so long. Too long. Weeks had turned into months, and somehow, without anyone saying it out loud, I had become a guest in my own son's life. A guest who needed an appointment. A reason. Permission. But today, I told myself, today would be different. I wiped my hands on my apron and reached for my phone. My fingers trembled slightly as I scrolled to his name. I smiled at his picture, my boy grown now with the same eyes that used to look up at me with so much trust. I pressed call. It rang once. Twice. 3 times. Hello, Ma. His voice. Just hearing it made something inside me soften. Beta, I said gently, my voice warm with hope. I've made dinner tonight. All your favorites. I thought, maybe you and she could come over? It's been so long since we sat together. There was a pause. Not a comfortable one. Not the pause of someone checking their schedule. It was the pause of someone bracing for impact. I heard muffled voices in the background. His voice, quieter now, speaking to someone else. Then her voice, sharp and clear, cutting through the distance between us. Tell her we're busy. My chest tightened. Ma, actually, we have plans tonight, he said, his tone apologetic but distant. Maybe some other time? I swallowed. Nodded even though he couldn't see me. Of course, Beta. Some other time. It's okay. But it wasn't okay. Because just as I was about to say goodbye, I heard her voice again, closer this time, as if she had taken the phone or leaned in on purpose, wanting me to hear every word. You're not invited. 3 words. Just 3 small words. But they hit me like stones thrown at glass. I stood there in my kitchen, surrounded by the smell of spices and love, the table set for 3, and I felt my world tilt. My hand holding the phone went numb. My throat closed. I didn't cry. Not then. I just whispered, "Take care, Beta," and ended the call. For a long time I stood there, staring at the food I had prepared with such hope. The chapatis stacked neatly. The curry still bubbling. The kheer cooling in a glass bowl. All of it for nothing. I turned off the stove, covered the dishes slowly, and sat down at the table. Alone. The silence in that house was so loud, it drowned out everything else. But it wasn't always like this. There was a time, a beautiful golden time, when this house was full of life. When every corner echoed with laughter and warmth. When I didn't have to beg for my son's time. When I wasn't a burden. I close my eyes and I can still see it. The day he got married. Oh, that day. I remember standing at the entrance of our home, my hands shaking as I held the arti thali. The bells rang. The Shania played. And there she was, walking in with flowers in her hair, dressed in red and gold, her eyes downcast, her hands delicate and soft. My son stood beside her, beaming. So proud. So happy. And I was crying. Not tears of sadness. No. These were tears of joy. Of relief. Of a prayer finally answered. I had always wanted a daughter. When my son was born, I had loved him with every fiber of my being. But somewhere deep inside I had always longed for a daughter too. Someone to share quiet moments with. Someone to pass down my recipes, my stories, my little rituals. And when he told me he was getting married, I thought, asterisk finally. Finally, I'll have that daughter, asterisk. I welcomed her with everything I had. I performed every ritual with tears streaming down my face. I whispered blessings over her head. I touched her feet to the threshold and prayed that she would bring light into this home. And for a while she did. Those first few months were everything I had dreamed of. She would come into the kitchen in the mornings, still shy, still adjusting. I would make tea for both of us and we would sit together, talking softly while my son got ready for work. I taught her how he liked his tea, strong with just a little sugar. I showed her where I kept the spices, the ones I had collected over decades. I shared my mother's recipes, written in faded ink on yellowing paper. She listened. She smiled. She called me Ma with warmth in her voice. I thought we were building something. A bond. A friendship. A family. I thought I had finally found my daughter. But slowly, so slowly I didn't even notice it happening, things began to change. It started with the smallest things. One morning I came into the kitchen and found everything rearranged. The spice jars I had kept on the left shelf for 30 years were now on the right. The utensils I could find with my eyes closed were in different drawers. I stood there, confused, searching for the ladle I needed. She walked in, drying her hands on a towel. I reorganized, she said brightly. It's more efficient this way. I smiled. Nodded. Oh. Okay. But inside something felt off. This was my kitchen. The kitchen where I had cooked for my husband, for my son, for countless guests and festivals. Everything had a place. A memory. And now it was different. I told myself I was being silly. Sentimental. That she was just trying to help. So I let it go. Then it was the living room. She replaced the curtains I had stitched by hand with store-bought ones. Sleek. Modern. Impersonal. Don't you like them, Ma? She asked when she saw my face. They're lovely, I said. But they weren't. They were just cloth. They had no story. Still, I said nothing. Because I didn't want to be that mother-in-law. The controlling one. The interfering one. I wanted her to feel at home. Even if, slowly, I was starting to feel like a guest. My son noticed nothing. Or maybe he did and chose not to say anything. He was happy. His wife was happy. And wasn't that what mattered? I told myself it was. But late at night, lying alone in my room, I felt a sadness I couldn't name. A quiet, creeping feeling that I was being erased. One small change at a time. The distance between us grew slowly, like a shadow stretching across the floor as the sun sets. At first, I didn't even realize it was happening. She started answering his phone. I would call my son and she would pick up. He's in the shower, Ma. I'll tell him you called. He's at work, Ma. He'll call you back. He's resting, Ma. Can I help you with something? Always polite. Always with a smile in her voice. But he never called back. And slowly I stopped hearing his voice altogether. I would visit unannounced the way mothers do, with a box of homemade sweets or fresh vegetables from the market. I'd knock on the door, excited to see them, to sit and talk and feel like I was still part of their lives. She would open the door, surprised. Oh, Ma. You should have called. I was nearby, I'd say, holding up the box. I brought something for you both. Thank you, Ma. That's so sweet. She'd take the box but wouldn't move aside. We were just about to head out, actually. Maybe next time. Next time. Those two words became a wall between us. I started noticing that I was the last to know about anything. Family gatherings. Dinners with friends. Weekend trips. I'd hear about them later, in passing, through a casual comment or a photo I'd see on his phone when he stopped by for 10 minutes between errands. You went to the hills? I asked once, surprised, looking at a picture of them smiling in front of a waterfall. Yeah, Ma. It was last minute. We thought you'd be too tired for the drive. Tired. That word became her favorite weapon. Don't trouble yourself, Ma. You must be tired. We'll handle it, Ma. You should rest. You don't need to come, Ma. It's too much at your age. At my age, I wasn't old. I was 62. I still walked every morning. I still cooked, cleaned, managed my home. But in her words, I had become fragile. Inconvenient. Someone to be managed, not included. And my son said nothing. He would smile nervously when I looked at him, caught between us, trying to keep everyone happy. But his silence felt like agreement. Like he had chosen a side. And it wasn't mine. She started making decisions without me. Small ones at first. We're repainting the guest room, Ma. That was my room. The room I stayed in when I visited. What color? I asked. Gray. It'll look modern. I hated gray. It felt cold. Lifeless. But I smiled. That sounds nice. Then it was bigger things. They were planning a puja at home. I found out 3 days before, and only because I happened to call. Oh, didn't I tell you, Ma? She said lightly. It's just a small thing. Nothing formal. But when I arrived that day, there were 30 people there. Relatives. Friends. Neighbors. Everyone except me had known. I felt like a stranger at my own son's home. And the worst part? He didn't even notice. He greeted me with a distracted hug, his mind elsewhere, his attention on the guests. I sat in a corner, smiling, pretending everything was fine. But inside I was disappearing. Then came the day that shattered everything. It was a Thursday afternoon. I remember because Thursdays used to be special. When my son was young, we'd have lunch together after his school. Even when he grew up, Thursdays always felt like ours. I had spent the morning in the kitchen, making his favorite dessert, kheer with extra cardamom and cashews, the way he loved it. I packed it carefully in a steel container, along with fresh parathas and mango pickle. I didn't call ahead. I wanted to surprise them. When I reached their apartment building, I felt a flutter of excitement in my chest. Maybe today would be different. Maybe today she'd smile and invite me in and we'd sit together like we used to. I climbed the stairs slowly, holding the container close. When I reached their door, I heard voices inside. Laughter. Music. The clinking of glasses. I smiled. They had guests. That was fine. I'd just drop off the food and leave. I knocked. The door opened. She stood there, dressed beautifully, her hair pinned up, a glass of wine in her hand. When she saw me, her smile faltered. Ma. She didn't move aside. What are you doing here? I held up the container, suddenly feeling foolish. I made kheer. And some parathas. I thought. We have guests, Ma. I looked past her. The apartment was glowing with candlelight. The table was set with elegant dishes. Friends, her friends, were laughing in the living room, their voices bright and carefree. A dinner party. And I hadn't been invited. Oh, I said softly. I didn't know. I'm sorry. I should have called. I held out the container. Here. You can have this later. She didn't take it. We already have dessert, Ma. We're fine. I stood there, holding the container like an unwanted gift, feeling my face burn with embarrassment. Can I just say hello to him? She glanced behind her, then back at me. He's busy, Ma. This isn't a good time. I'm his mother. The words came out before I could stop them. Her eyes hardened. And then, in a voice low and cold, she said, You're not invited. The hallway seemed to tilt. I stared at her, waiting for her to laugh, to say she was joking, to take it back. But she didn't. She just stood there, her hand on the door, her face blank. From inside, I heard my son's laughter. He didn't even know I was there. I don't remember what I said next. I think I just nodded. I turned and walked down the stairs, my legs shaking, my chest tight. I got into my car, placed the container on the passenger seat, and sat there. And then, finally, I let myself break. I cried. Not quietly. Not gracefully. I cried the way you cry when something inside you shatters. When you realize that the people you loved most in the world see you as nothing more than an inconvenience. I cried all the way home. And when I walked into my empty house, I looked at the food I had made with so much love, and I felt something I had never felt before. Not anger. Not sadness. Just exhaustion. I was tired of trying. Tired of hoping. Tired of being unwanted. After that day, I stopped. I stopped calling. Stopped visiting. Stopped waiting by the phone, hoping he'd remember me. If I wasn't wanted, I wouldn't force myself into their lives. I had spent years bending, adjusting, swallowing my hurt. For what? To be tolerated? To be pushed aside like old furniture? No. I deserved more than that. So I chose silence. Not out of spite. Not out of revenge. But out of respect. For myself. At first, it was hard. My hands reached for the phone 100 times a day. I thought of things I wanted to tell him. Little things. Silly things. The way I always had. But I stopped myself. Because I realized something. If he wanted to talk to me, he knew where I was. If he wanted to see me, he knew the way. And if he didn't? Then maybe it was time I learned to let go. I started waking up earlier. The house felt too quiet, too full of memories, so I spent my mornings outside. I worked in the garden. I had neglected it for years, too busy trying to stay close to him. But now I poured all that energy into the soil. I planted roses. Marigolds. Jasmine. I watered them every morning, watching them grow, feeling a strange sense of peace. These plants didn't need me to prove my worth. They just needed care. Consistency. And in return, they bloomed. I joined a prayer group at the temple. Women my age, some widowed, some alone like me. We would sit together in the mornings, chanting softly, finding comfort in routine. I started reading again. Books I had wanted to read for years but never had time for. I called old friends. We met for tea. We talked about our lives, our children, our regrets. And slowly, without realizing it, I began to feel lighter. I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't hoping for a call that wouldn't come. I was simply living. And strangely, the less I reached out, the more I noticed his absence. He called once, maybe 2 weeks after I had stopped. Ma. Is everything okay? Yes, Beta. Why? You haven't called. I paused. I've been busy. Oh. Okay. Just wanted to make sure you're fine. I am. There was an awkward silence. Okay. Take care, Ma. You too. I hung up and I didn't cry. I didn't feel angry. I just felt free. Free from the weight of expectation. Free from the pain of rejection. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. But freedom, I realized, doesn't mean the absence of love. It just means you stop letting that love consume you. Weeks passed. Maybe a month. I stopped counting. My days had a rhythm now. Garden in the morning. Temple. Reading. Meals I made just for myself, simple and quiet. I stopped looking at my phone every hour. I stopped imagining what they were doing without me. I stopped breaking my own heart. And then one evening my phone rang. His name flashed on the screen. I hesitated before answering. Hello. Ma. His voice sounded different. Strained. Weak. Beta? What's wrong? I'm not feeling well. He coughed. Fever. Body aches. She's trying, but... He didn't finish the sentence. But I heard everything he didn't say. Do you need me to come? Silence. Then, quietly, almost like a child, would you? I closed my eyes. I'll be there in 20 minutes. When I arrived, she opened the door. Her face was pale. Her hair tied back messily. She looked exhausted. She didn't say anything. She just stepped aside. I walked in. The apartment was dim. The curtains were drawn. It smelled like medicine and worry. He was lying on the couch, wrapped in a thick blanket even though the room was warm. His face was flushed, his eyes half closed. When he saw me, something in his expression softened. Ma. I knelt beside him, placed my hand on his forehead. He was burning. How long have you been like this? 2 days. I looked at her. She stood near the doorway, arms crossed, looking helpless. Do you have ginger? Tulsi leaves? She shook her head. Turmeric. Yes. Bring it. And a pot. I'll make kata. She hesitated, then nodded and disappeared into the kitchen. I turned back to my son. Stroked his hair the way I used to when he was small. You'll be fine, I whispered. And for the first time in months, I saw him relax. I spent the night there. I made him kata, the traditional remedy my mother had taught me, with ginger, tulsi, black pepper, and jaggery. I made him drink it even though he protested that it was too bitter. I soaked a cloth in cool water and placed it on his forehead. I sat beside him, my hand on his, the way I used to during his childhood fevers. He fell asleep around midnight, his breathing steadier, his fever finally breaking. And I stayed. Not because I was needed, but because I wanted to. Around 3 in the morning, I heard footsteps. I looked up. She stood in the doorway, watching. She looked small. Vulnerable. You should sleep, Ma, she said softly. I shook my head. I'm fine. She didn't leave. Just stood there, staring at the floor. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, I'm sorry. I looked at her. Her eyes were red. Her hands were trembling. I'm sorry, Ma. For everything. I didn't speak. I just listened. I thought I was building our life. Our space. I thought I was doing the right thing. She wiped her eyes. But I didn't realize I was pushing you out. I didn't realize how much he needed you. How much I needed you. A tear slipped down her cheek. I was wrong. For a long moment I just looked at her. This girl. This woman. Who I had once welcomed as a daughter. And I realized she wasn't cruel. She was just scared. Scared of losing control. Scared of being compared. Scared of not being enough. I stood up slowly. Walked over to her. And I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I pulled her into my arms. She collapsed against me, sobbing. It's okay, I whispered, stroking her hair. It's okay, Beta. She cried like a child. And I held her like a mother. Because that's what she needed. Not judgment. Not anger. Just forgiveness. A week later, my phone rang. It was her. Ma. Her voice was soft. Nervous. Yes, Beta. I wanted to ask you something. I waited. Will you come for dinner tonight? Please? I want to cook for you. My chest tightened. You don't have to. I want a Ma. Please. I closed my eyes. Smiled. I'd love to. That evening, when I arrived at their door, I felt a nervousness I hadn't felt in years. I knocked. The door opened. She stood there, her hands folded in respect. Behind her, my son smiled. Welcome, Ma, she said softly. I stepped inside. The apartment smelled like home. The table was set beautifully. Candles. Fresh flowers. And in the center, my recipe. The curry I had taught her how to make. I made it the way you showed me, she said, her voice trembling with hope. I looked at her. At my son. At the life they had built. And I felt something I hadn't felt in so long. I felt like I belonged. We sat down together. We ate. We talked. We laughed. And in that moment I understood something profound. Sometimes, love means stepping back. Sometimes, silence speaks louder than words. Sometimes, you have to lose your place to teach others the value of having you there. I had walked away not out of anger but out of dignity. And in that space they learned what I had always known. That a mother's love isn't loud. It doesn't beg. It doesn't demand. It just is. Steady. Quiet. Unshakable. And when you take it for granted, you realize, too late, how cold the world feels without it. Months have passed since that evening. Things are different now. She calls me every few days. Not out of obligation, but because she wants to. My son visits more often. Sometimes alone. Sometimes with her. And when they do, we sit together, not as strangers, not as guests and hosts, but as family. Real family. Built not on blood or duty, but on respect. She asks for my recipes now. She listens when I speak. She includes me in decisions, in plans, in the small joys of everyday life. And I've learned to protect my peace. I love them. Deeply. But I no longer break myself trying to prove it. Because I know now, love that demands your dignity isn't love at all. It's desperation. And I am no longer desperate. Sometimes, late in the evening, I sit in my garden, watching the sun set behind the jasmine vines. I think about that day. The day she said, "You're not invited." And I realize it was the best thing that ever happened to me. 'Cause it taught me something I had forgotten. That I matter. Not because I'm useful. Not because I'm needed. But because I exist. And that is enough. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt unwanted, invisible, or cast aside, know this. Your silence has power. Your absence will be felt. And your peace? Your peace is worth more than any seat at any table. Walk away if you must. Not in anger. Not in bitterness. But in love. Love for yourself. And one day, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day they'll come looking for you. And when they do, you'll be standing tall. Not waiting. Not begging. Just there. Whole. Strong. Free. And that, my dear, is the sweetest victory of all.